Hey gang, Hakuna Matata to you guys. It's Sunday, October 27, I think it is. And it's about 2:45 in the afternoon, and I'm just now getting back onto the door thing. The wifey and I went over to Orlando and celebrated a birthday for a good old friend. And yeah, you know what? It takes time away from getting the project done, but you know what? Life goes on. You gotta live. Gotta do the family thing, right? So it's all about balance. So one of the things I do, I don't know if I do what I do best, but I sit and think about things. And while I was doing the drive, and it was about 2.5 hours each way, it occurred to me I made a little bit of a oversight. I won't call it a mistake. Erroring on the safe side is probably a better way of putting it. So when I cut this aluminum out of this to make space for the hinge, I only went as deep here as the thickness of the metal, so that the hinge would just sit flat here and be flush on this side, which is not wrong and it's not right at the same time. Ultimately, this hinge needs to go flush here, so ultimately the amount of depth that I should have cut this should match the thickness of the hinge leaf, and then maybe a little bit extra just so that there's no interference. So to get started today, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get a good measurement on these hinges and make sure they're all the same, which they probably are, and find out what that thickness is, and then we're going to put this back in the vise and make this cut that deep, and then we'll make a note of that measurement so we use it on the other 3 cutouts. I got the top hinge, number 2, cut out. Much easier now that I know what I'm doing. 200 thousandths deep here, and 1.75 in from here to here, 1.875 from here to here. And now all I gotta do is file up the corners. I'm leaving that for later because we're staying with the milling machine operation. So what I just did is I spread out the hinges equally, and it's 19.25 inches between hinges. So I just crudely marked out where the cuts have to be so I don't screw up and maybe put it on the wrong side. And I even put a little mark around the corner on both of them, so I know where it has to be cut. Now I'm going to precisely measure 19.25 from here to here, give myself a nice scribe mark, and then 4.5 inches more, and I'll do the same over there. Precise measurements, the scratches that I made, and that's all I really need is a guide to get me started, more or less in place. I mean I could be off by 1/4 inch and no one ever know it, but so there's, this one is 19.25 inches from that opening, and then 4.5 inches more. I could sanity check myself to make sure, right? Alright, so that's the deal. So now I could chuck this up back in the machine, make my first cut, and just duplicate how I made that one, and we'll be done with these lickety-split. And then the final step, like I mentioned over there, we're going to file out the roundness out of these corners, which that'll just take a moment. And it's raining. I actually hate having my garage open when it's raining like this, because all the humidity comes in here and makes my machines rust. Yeah, maybe I'll shut the door and open that door to the house and get some air conditioning in here. The trouble with that is it makes the house smell like my garage. So here's a clip of my methodology here. I just happen to have this parallel in this kit here. Okay, it's just machine tools stuff, okay? And just happens to be 1 3/4 inch, which is a tight fit on the inside here. And this is what I did on the second one I did over there. Because what I found is after I cut out this metal, this became kind of squirrely, and I ran the risk of damaging my work. So I put this in here and I've clamped it, which I probably don't even need to do because this is so tight, but hey, we're trying to do everything the best we can. And this is only in the vise now, upside down, so I could get this in place. So let me flip this thing over now and I'll show you the rest of the setup. So I've got a jack right here. This is adjustable little screw jack. So I set it up so it's just touching the bottom, and then I put this toe clamp on top to clamp down against it. So now I've got an extremely rigid piece. Oops, sorry about that. And so now what I got to be careful with, which I guess I don't really have a choice, because there's not enough room from here to there to make room. I guess I probably could, but I have to take all the stuff off the shelf, because all my settings here were for the other way around. But that's not a biggie. I'll recalibrate, because the only setting I really need is from here to there, and that's easy enough to do. I just touch off at this point and then 0 my y-axis, and then I go in 1.875, and I know I'm cutting along the back edge. And as far as the two sides go, I only really need to be accurate on one, and it doesn't even have to be accurate, right? And finally, I only need to make sure I've got 200 thousandths of clearance from the surface to my clamps, so I don't mill off the edge of my clamp. Here it just barely tapping, so I'm at 0, and my bit is just touching the surface. So I've set my y-axis to 0, and I just did a little test on the surface, and I've set my height, and right now I'm 200 thousandths higher, which is the depth I need to cut in the front this time. So I got mixed up there just for a second because we turned it around, and that's the whole reason why we put the Sharpie marks on here, to keep us from getting screwed up. We're going to lower this thing down 100, 200. So now we're pretty much flush. Just skimmed a little bit right there. It might be a tad high. Let's take off about 3 thousandths. Alright. So we're just barely touching. So we come over here. I'm going to meet this line just by eye. Okay. Let's bring our table up a few thou. Okay, close enough. I overshot by a few thousandths, but it don't matter. So now I can make my cut. So the first cut I'm going to make is taking out this side. Then we're going to plunge in, come across the back, and out. The last one is a precarious one because we don't want anything to get jammed in there, to come flying out, damaging the work and maybe hit me. So what I'll do is I'm only going to cut halfway and then a little more, just to where it's just barely through, and then maybe break it off, or it might drop out easily enough. So I forgot to mention, now that I've got us lined up on that line, I set my x-axis to 0, so I can always come right back to it. And if I wanted to, I can do the math and measure the diameter of that bit. So subtract that from 4.5, and I know that's how far I got to go over. But last time I just used my dowel caliper to measure how I was coming along. You know what? I think we'll go ahead and do that now, just to make my life a little easier. You get a measurement on this width of the cut. Subtract that from 4.5 inches, and that's how far I need to move over, and I'll be right on that line. Okay, our hinges are 4.5 inches wide. The bit is 0.312 wide. So if I subtract the two, 4.188 is how far I'll need to move the table over to give me a 4.5 inch opening. If everything was perfect, but I know we've got a little bit of wobble in this because I'm using a drill chuck to hold my bit, not a collet, and even though they're still not perfect, right? So I'm gonna go like 4.175, which I remember that number now from yesterday, and then I'll measure and sneak up on it, and bada bing. We're back in place, and I did another little test fit here. So the gap that you see to the aluminum is about how much wood is going to have to be removed in order for this to go flush. So that's what we're looking for. So my next step at this point, because I can always take off more, right? My next step at this point is I want to drill the holes and put the screws in. And so I went to the box that these things came in, and these are the screws that came with it. And I think the screws are too small. They don't quite, maybe it's, I think I could go to the next size up. These are probably 12s. Maybe a 14 would be the right screw for that. That's fine. I can go with a screw that's too small and always put a bigger screw in it. And here's some number 10s that I bought the other day. And these are definitely smaller. Right? So these are probably 12s, and I think I could put a 14 in there, but we're gonna install the number 12s. And so for the life of me, I don't know what the heck I did with my drill guide. It might still be in the bus. Oh wait, is it? Yeah, here they are. Awesome. So let's see if I can use this one to get me going. I think I can just knock this little tip guide off of it. This was for doing the windows. That little lip that you see there actually fit in the hole in the window. And then my drill bit fit in here, and it ensured that the hole was drilled precisely in the middle of the hole of the window when I was drilling into the bus. So now I don't need this anymore. I can use this for here. So let's see, what size bit do I need? I like dowel caliper. So 150 thou, something just a hair under 150 thousandths of an inch is going to be, I think these are the drill bits for that thing. Is that true? Yes. These are, I think, 130 something. 135. Gosh, that's a little tight. Let's give it a try. I know it'd be fine if I was screwed into pine, but we're going into red oak here, and we also have screws going right dead into the seam I didn't want to put too much split pressure on that seam, even though I'm very confident that this is very well glued together. Yeah, you know, I'm not looking for trouble. So the way we're going to do this, I'm going to put this into the drill. See if I can do this with one hand here. Put this little drill bit in the drill after I knock the tip off of that thing. We're going to put our hinge in place. And we're going to push our tool in place. And you can see right now it doesn't go all the way into the countersink because that little tip is hitting. So I'm just going to grind that tip off and then everything will be fine. Then I can pre-drill these holes. I'll do one at a time, or at least do one, put the screw in, and then do the rest. Something of that nature. Here's a trick Dad taught me. Take some candle wax and you rub it on the screw and it'll screw right in there. Like night and day on the one I just screwed in with the wax and the first one I screwed in without the wax.